Welcome back to another episode of Local Search Tuesdays. This week I'm sharing my presentation from last week's LocalU conference in New York City. Last week I hopped a flight up to New York City to speak at LocalU, one of my favorite conferences. It's such a blast to nerd out about local SEO with other local SEOs for a full day. And I got to see a few friends I haven't seen in years. So for this week's episode, I'm sharing my entire presentation. Obviously, this will be a bit longer than my standard episodes, so get comfy. This is lessons learned from over 1,000 local SEO audits. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at SearchLab, but you probably know that because you're watching my video series. But just in case you haven't seen any of these videos before, I have a weekly series called Local Search Tuesdays. You can catch it every Tuesday on our blog or on social media. And this is a fun picture of me speaking at MozCon a few years back. I'm lucky enough to get to speak at conferences all over the world, but a lot of the conferences will just put a salesperson on stage because they're just there to get leads. That sales guy or sales gal, usually not that great at speaking. They're going to stand locked behind the podium. There's literally zero design element to their slides whatsoever. So it's just a plain white background with black Arial font, and they pack every slide with bullet points, and they just read bullet points the entire time. And they've actually done scientific studies to prove that bullet points kill kittens. So today we're going to keep all the kitties safe and not have any bullet points in the presentation. And you saw the movie reference there at the beginning. I'm a movie nut. Every time I do a presentation, I love to share my love of movies with my love of SEO. Today's theme is sci-fi movies. So we have 96 references to sci-fi movies, and typically I go back and include at least one movie for every year in the last 50 years. But since we're doing sci-fi, got to go back 56 years so we can have all the Planet of the Apes movies. So there's attribution to the side if it's something you haven't seen. You'll have a kick-ass list of sci-fi movies to watch later, besides learning about some local SEO. So you're probably watching this because you need a hand with local SEO. You're spending too much time looking up at the competition ranking higher in local search results. And I know it's confusing because the local algorithm's a tough puzzle to crack, but you can't really just float along with minimal effort like a lot of businesses try to do, because if you do try to skate by with minimal effort, you kind of blend into the background noise, and then you're basically invisible to potential customers. But I don't want you to lose your head. It's not really that hard to figure out the right things to do. But there's a lot of misinformation out there online. So today I'm going to help you dig through the giant pile of crap that's out there on the internet so you know what actually works. In fact, you might think of it like I'm giving you a cheat code or a view behind the scenes to understand how the matrix works. So I've got this scoring matrix that I created for these 20 group meetings that are small meetings of car dealers that get together a couple of times a year. And I created a matrix so that at these meetings, at the end of my presentation, I could point out, hey, you have the best SEO in the room and you have the worst SEO in the room. And I've been using this matrix for almost 9 years at this point, and it's basically just a small SEO audit. And about 2.5 years ago, I was talking to one of the guys that I do a lot of 20 groups with, and he suggested that we update the matrix so that it's something that the dealers could use themselves. So I thought I could make a couple of updates to make it a little bit easier for them to do so. So we labeled each element as a question. So instead of just saying homepage title tag, it will now say, is there a city mentioned in the homepage title tag? And then each question has a drop down with possible answers. And then when you select the answer from the drop down, the scores are calculated automatically. So it makes a lot more sense to people. And it was a big hit because it made SEO really easy to understand. The question and answer format really just made it simple for people. So we decided to start using it on demo calls. So every time we were going to talk to a potential new client, we would run the matrix to do a quick little audit on their digital footprint. And then it looked like we spent all this time actually looking at their business before the call instead of just showing up blind. And it more than doubled our close rate for demos immediately. So when I was creating these slides at the beginning of August, the current version that we've been using for the last 2 years, we've run 1,274 businesses on this matrix. It's important to point out that the matrix scores on tactics, not on strategy. And a lot of people use those words interchangeably, but strategy is the direction you're going, and tactics are the individual steps that you take to get there. And keeping it on that basic tactical level makes it more universally helpful, because if it was too much on the strategy side and someone was to take those scores back to their current SEO vendor, it'd be very easy to refute those scores and say, oh, they don't know anything about you. They don't know your town. They don't know what our strategy is. You're fine. You could ignore it. But because it's basic tactics that everyone that knows SEO would agree are important to have handled, you can't really argue about strategy. And if you don't have the right basic tactics in place, your strategy wouldn't matter anyway. So the matrix scores the 4 major areas that influence your visibility in local searches. And the scores of those areas are then weighted to approximate the importance of each area to Google's local algorithm. One section is the on-site score section, which has a maximum value of 44 points and basically just evaluates the content on your site and how the content is optimized. And then we have the link score that evaluates the links pointed to your website from other websites with a maximum point value of 10 points. The Google Business Profile score maxes out at 32 possible points, and it evaluates, obviously, your Google Business Profile and how it's optimized. And then the customer review score will max out at 14 points, and it's looking at your reviews and your responses on Google and Yelp. So when you add all of the scores together, you get a score anywhere in the range from 0 to a maximum of 100 points. But negative points are possible as well. So if there's something that is either likely or definitely hurting your visibility, instead of just not getting points for doing it right, well, you get points if you get it right, you don't get points if you get it wrong. But certain things, if you get it wrong, will actually take points away. The highest score that we've ever seen is just an 83.6 out of 100. It's effectively impossible to get 100 points. But this was actually one of our clients. So the highest score that we've seen from anyone that was not a client was just 65 out of 100. And ideally, if you're doing well, you want to have a score in the mid 60s to low 80s. The lowest score we've ever seen was a dealership in California that had a negative 71.5. They were doing a lot of stuff wrong, and even worse, they were spending $5,000 a month for SEO. But the average that we see is only 12.5 out of 100 possible points. People are not doing great SEO out there. And that average score is trending lower. In 2022, it was 22 points. And last year, it was 14 points. And this year, the average has dropped down to just 12. And the problems are even more obvious when we look at the scores for each individual section. The on-site section is the most important bit. It's almost half of the entire point value. And the average score isn't even a full point out of a possible 44. And if we do high school math score test, what do you get on your test of, A, B, C, D, whatever? This is a 0.5 for your test score. Pretty bad. The average link score is just 0.5 out of 10. Easy math there. That's just 5%. Still not great. The average GBP score is 7.5 out of 32. That's a 23.4% score on your test. And the average review score is 4.5 out of 14. That's a 32 on your test. So all of them are failing. But on-site is by far the most important for organic visibility. But look, it's by far the lowest average score. So today, I'm going to do things a little bit differently and walk through the most common mistakes that we found doing all of these audits. Instead of saying, oh, just here's how to do SEO, I'll show you the things to avoid, because that helps just as much. So one of the things that we see all the time is the default page content is not updated on websites. So this is an example of the default service content that we see on a lot of dealership websites, because we have a lot of car dealer clients. And it's just the default thing. Nothing changes other than the name of the dealership. So if you have default content, you're going to look just like everybody else. You need to update that content and make it more about your business. We also saw tons of sites with hardly any content or absolutely no content on a page. We saw this a lot on the homepage of websites, and that's obviously really bad. If you don't have great content on the page, that page is not going to show up in search results. Plus, if you don't have good content, you're not going to be answering your customers' questions, which means your site's not going to convert. A really, really easy way to think about how Google works is this. If you want to show up as a search result, when someone types in a particular keyword phrase, then you need a dedicated page of content on your site that's about that singular concept. But since we're targeting the local algorithm, it doesn't have to be the best page on the internet. You just need to be the best answer in the local area to the question that potential customer, that searcher is asking. And if you're writing the best answer, you're probably going to answer some of the subsequent questions that searcher would have once they had their initial answer. And then obviously you're going to need to add in the call to action stuff and the little bit that talks about why your business is awesome and why people should buy from you. So it's really important to remember that you should be writing for humans. You're writing to answer those potential questions. And then you turn around and optimize for the pattern detection side of Google. But most sites are simply writing for Google. They're just writing content and saying, oh, this is content that's going to rank, but it's horrible content for actual humans. So don't do it that way. We see a lot of sites that don't have any embedded photos on the page. So it's just a wall of text with no photo whatsoever. And when you're optimizing your page, it's really important to stick with that singular page per concept idea. So you should have the best answer in the local area that answers subsequent questions, et cetera, but it's one page per concept. And when you're optimizing the page, you should have a single keyword phrase and a single location phrase throughout the whole page. But we see lots of sites that don't have separate pages. They'll just have a big list of topics like this. And you're not going to show up for oil replacement, brake repair, engine diagnostic, tune-ups, air filters, alternators, batteries, headlights, all these different concepts. Just because you have a single word and a bullet point list on a page, you need separate pages. And we also see pages that have multiple cities in the title tag and or multiple cities in the H1 heading. And you're not going to rank in 3 cities just because you put 3 cities in a title tag. Again, you have to create content separately for each of these areas. We also see mismatched keywords or mismatched cities where you'll have one city in the title tag and a different city in the heading, or one city in the heading and 3 or 4 different cities in the content, or different keywords in one spot from another spot. So remember the pattern detection side of Google and optimize correctly. And we also see a lot of sites that will add content around topics that they already rank for. Think of it this way. If you're the only Ford dealership in town, you don't need to add any Ford dealer content or Ford model content because there are no other options. You will inherently rank number 1 because you're the only Ford dealer in town. So adding more and more content about being a Ford dealer does nothing to help your visibility. You should instead be adding content around the topics that you are not visible for, because that gets additional eyeballs on your site and brings you additional sales. We also see a few sites here and there that only optimize for locations that are significantly far away. We did this for a car dealer website a few weeks ago, and the entire site was optimized around a city that was 2.5 hours away, and not the city that they're actually in. We also see a lot of sites adding useless city pages, like this site here that says, we serve all of Long Island, including all of these cities. And this was on the homepage of a website. This does not help customers. Customers don't need to click on this to get driving directions to the different cities. And this isn't going to help the dealership rank in all of those cities. You're not going to rank in another city just because you added a crappy page of shitty content on your website about that city. If you do want to rank in other cities, you got to do it the right way. And this video will walk you through how to do city pages. And if you're in a more competitive market where there's more competition, you're going to need to go beyond city pages and use local content silos. And this video will walk you through how to do local content silos. We also see a lot of websites optimizing for near me searches by having the phrase near me on the page. But if there's a whole lot of competition in your town, this is not an effective strategy, because when someone says, I need this product or service near me, they're explicitly telling Google they want options that are physically close to their real world location. And if you're close to them, great, you're going to show up whether you have near me on the page or not. If you're not close to them, having near me on the page isn't going to help you show up, because they've told Google they want things that are close to them in reality. We also see a lot of businesses that don't have any H1 heading on a page or any H2 or H3. They have no headings to break up their content, and that's bad. Local business schema is hugely important, and more than half of the sites that we ran this on did not have the correct local business schema on the landing page that their Google Business Profile website button links to. We also see tons and tons and tons of sites that have these massive homepage slideshows with like
up to 33, 34 images in a slideshow, or a lot of times we'll see 20. No customer's going to land on your homepage and click next through 20 images or 30 images, and you're just slowing your site down for no reason. Nobody's going to see anything past the first or second image. We also see a ridiculous number of sites that don't have a blog at all. No blog. They think it's fluff. They think it's not important. But it's really important because all the content on the main menu of your site is bottom of funnel content that should be meant to show up and generate conversions. But the more expensive your product or service is, the more research people are going to do before they get to that conversion point in the funnel. So you need to target those mid to upper funnel shoppers with content that isn't going to result in conversions or leads, but it helps inform those customers and push them down that buyer funnel. So it doesn't make sense to junk up your website with stuff that's kind of upper funnel, mid funnel, bottom of funnel, all in the main menu. So the blog is the right place to put that more research focused mid to upper funnel content. We also see a lot of really crappy SEO agencies saying that they're targeting the local area by just shoving in city names where they don't really make sense. Like these blog posts where every single one of these is this blog post topic near a city. And it's also important to understand that humans don't search for a product or service near a city. They search for a product or service in a city. But like the 2024 Ford Bronco Badlands model near Enterprise, Alabama, the Ford Bronco Badlands model is not different near Enterprise, Alabama than it is everywhere else. It's the same thing everywhere. And customers are not going to search that sort of stuff. Or the 2024 Expedition Platinum near Auburn, Alabama. Like all of these are just picking a random city. And Google doesn't work that way. And these aren't helpful for humans either. We also evaluated the number of links pointed at the websites, and the average number of unique linking domains was only 257 sites. It's really important as you're evaluating your link profile that you don't really consider the total number of links because there's diminishing value in getting more than one link from the same site. Instead, concentrate more on the number of different websites that are linking to you. We also saw tons of sites that were local businesses targeting the local algorithm, yet they didn't have any links from businesses or websites in the local area. They were all these really crappy kind of just sites made only for link building purposes. Reviews are also really important. We can evaluate all the reviews as we're going through these audits, and the average number of reviews for a business is 1,174 reviews, and the average rating was a 4.6. Another big mistake that we saw, though, was a lot of businesses just don't respond to bad reviews at all. They'll respond to all their positive reviews, but they don't respond to the bad reviews at all. Or we see really bad replies to bad reviews. Please do not do something like this where you literally are pasting word for word exactly the same response to every single bad review, and all you do is change out the name of the person you responded to. That is not helpful for anyone. We also see a lot of businesses just flat out ignoring Yelp and not paying attention to Yelp at all, and that's a big mistake because if anyone looks up directions on Apple Maps, the reviews that show on Apple Maps are sourced from Yelp, not from Google. And you don't want to be in a situation like this where someone decides to come do business with you, but when they look up directions on Apple Maps, they see that you got a 1.5 rating instead of the 4.4 that they were expecting to see. We also see a lot of people picking the wrong primary category on their Google Business Profile. And the primary category is the most influential factor that will influence your visibility in the map pack or in Google Maps. So you really want to be strategic. This video can walk you through how to do that. It's also important not to select categories that are not related to your business. And we see a lot of businesses doing that. The most common mistakes that we saw for car dealers were things like this. People would put appraiser, I guess because they're appraising the value of the used car trade-in, but appraiser is a specific service that's not related to car dealers. Car service, we see that a lot. I guess because they're thinking it's like the service department, but car service is like Uber. You're calling a car to bring you somewhere. We see chauffeur service on a lot of Ford dealerships. Don't know why, because clearly that's not what the dealerships do. And a lot of dealerships put electric vehicle charging station, but you don't want to put that on there because you don't want a random person to come take up that prime parking spot right in front of your building just to get a free charge. And don't put manufacturer or automobile manufacturer or any of the crazy things that you don't actually do those things. And there are plenty of other categories that do apply. So make sure you're choosing the right ones. And it's important to include UTM tracking on your website links. We've been talking about this for years and years and years. You want correct attribution in Google Analytics, but almost half of the GBPs that we audited didn't have UTM tracking. Or they only had it on the website link, but they didn't include it on the other links. And you need to have it on every link within a GBP. We also saw a ton of businesses that did not seed questions that are common questions into their questions and answer section. And we saw a ridiculous number of businesses that just don't answer the questions in the questions and answers section at all. And it's really important that you pay attention because each question can receive multiple answers. So you want to keep your owner answer upvoted to be the primary answer displayed to every question. We saw most businesses are not doing this. We saw a lot of businesses not using Google Posts, or if they're using them incorrectly and treating them like social media. And the really important thing is that you treat it like an ad, because that's what it is. It's a free ad that appears in your profile. But that post thumbnail has to be compelling. It's got to be a great image. It's got to be great text. And we saw almost everyone had horrible post thumbnails that they were not paying attention to. And another interesting thing that we saw, whenever we use this matrix on demo calls, after the demo call, we give the matrix to that potential client. So even if they don't work with us, they still have that audit that they can take with them to whoever they decide to have handle their SEO. And they've got a nice little guide of things that they need to fix to show up better in searches. But then we have these people come back to us 6 to 8 months later, maybe a year later, and say, yeah, it's not really working out with the people that we chose, so we want to work with you instead. And so we'll rescore their site to see what things look like today. And a lot of these people have made no updates, and all of the same mistakes and errors are still there 6 to 8 to 12 months later, which is shocking because you'd think you've got this audit that says fix these things. You'd fix them, but they're not fixing them. Now, we do have a generic version of the matrix that will work for any local business, but we also have created vertical specific versions that get a little more dialed into the idiosyncrasies and things that need to happen on particular websites that may not need to happen on others. And since our kind of 3 primary verticals are car dealers, attorneys, and cannabis dispensaries, we do have a version of the matrix for each of those that is unique to each vertical. Now, one of the cool things that I want to show is in the car dealer version, you could have a car dealer that sells new cars, and they also have service and everything else that a new car dealer has. Then you also have used car dealers that only sell used cars, but then they also provide service. And then you have used car dealers that only sell cars and don't provide service. That means sections of the matrix wouldn't get filled out, which would kind of not make it fair for that used car guy that doesn't do service because he couldn't get up to 100 points. So we've got a selector in the sheet that will change the weight of scores based on the type of dealership that we're scoring so that we don't have to create 3 separate versions of the auto dealer matrix. And so it looks kind of like this. As you select a different type of dealership, it will set a different weight for that score for on-site to make sure that even though they may not be using all of the sections, they can still score up to the 44 points that section should allow them to score. So I wanted to share these with you so you could check them out and potentially use them for your own clients. So the generic versions there on the left and the auto dealer versions there on the right, you can download both and see the differences between the two and how we've adjusted things for a particular vertical, and then figure out how you might want to adjust things for the verticals that you serve with your agency or freelance work. The matrix is really awesome because it points out really obvious opportunities to improve for that local algorithm so you can get results pretty quickly. And it's also a great guide for your team for things that they need to knock out right off the bat when you do that initial site optimization for a brand new client. Just remember that the basics still matter. Don't get hung up on crazy strategies and forget the basics. If you don't get distracted and you cover the basics, you'll end up winning every time. Thanks so much for listening. I hope that didn't go too fast and explode your brain. And for people that have not seen Skinner's, the guy's brain literally explodes. The truth is out there when it comes to using a local SEO audit to improve your process. Hopefully now I've given you the key to use these audits for the power of good, and you'll be able to break out of your shells and do better SEO for your clients and even win more clients so that your agency will live long and prosper. And as always, at the end of the presentation, there is a list of all the movies by order of release date. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks for sticking around to watch the whole session, but we're definitely out of time for this week's episode, so you know what that means. Put your hand on the screen right here. We totally just high-fived because you learned something awesome. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Local Search Tuesdays.